Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection Podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. Of course, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained each and every week. We're glad that you're here today. My name is Amy Johnson. I'm going to be your host for today's show for episode 318 of the Canadiens Connection Podcast, titled 5 Up, 5 Down. Which Habs are thriving and who's struggling? It's going to be a great show for you today. Of course, I'm always pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, who is the founder and president of Rocket Sports. His name is Mr. Rick Stevens. Always glad to be here with you. How you doing today?
Doing great. Glad to be here with you too. A lovely weekend. Lovely weekend in Montreal, 18 degrees and a lovely fall day. What else is going on this weekend? F1 is back.
Woohoo.
Yeah, in Austin, in Texas.
Texas, that's right. Halloween happenings are starting to take place here and there. Saw Marc-Andre Fleury dressing up like McLovin from Superbad this week, which was probably one of the best costumes I've seen in a while.
Yeah, I wondered if he got his hair cut. Did he get his bangs trimmed off?
I don't know. He looked
tremendous.
Just like McLovin.
Yeah.
Like it was, and he had the Hawaii driver's license like name tag on. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
I always look forward to this time of year to see when all of the clubs have their Halloween parties and to see how creative some of the players in the NHL get and their wives and girlfriends. It's always pretty fun. So yeah, it's a good time of year. It's very warm here in Pennsylvania as well. It's going to be in the 70s here for the next few days. So one last gasp of summer before I think the cold really starts to set in.
Not a great week if you're the Montreal Canadiens, though, and fans are not happy this week. Happy.
We'll see how they do on Saturday night, but no, we're going to get you caught up on what's happened in the 3 games that the Canadiens have played since our last show last Saturday. There's a lot of roster news this week as well. There's all sorts of movement on the roster, injuries, guys getting healthy, who's traveling, who's not. We'll make sense of all that for you. The Laval Rocket continued their opening weekend last week. They have their home opening weekend this week, so we'll get you caught up on how the prospects are doing this week in the prospect report. There's some really interesting quotes from Jeff Gorton that have come out this week about a number of things, about Kirby Dach, about Ivan Demidov, because Ivan Demidov and his ice time seems to be an evergreen topic of conversation week to week. So we're going to bring you some audio from Jeff Gorton and talk about what he has to say. We've got news from around the NHL, some of which is pretty pretty entertaining, I must say. And then we're going to get to our big segment, our big topic in segment 2, 5 up, 5 down after 5 games in, where we're going to take a look at 5 players who are underperforming, 5 players who are, I don't want to say overperforming, but are above expectations, perhaps, who are really standing out, and where that sets the Canadiens up at this early stage of the season. And we have a related 2-part question of the week for all of you listening and watching out there. So you'll want to pay attention for that at the end of segment 2. In segment 3, we've got some things to catch you up on. And then, boy, you were not shy in your enthusiasm for commenting on last week's show and answering last week's question of the week. And we have some tremendous reader and listener and viewer comments to bring to you today. So you're not going to want to miss those. Maybe yours was one of them that we're going to get to in segment 3. It's just one of the reasons why we love hearing from all of our fans so much, because we like sharing all the terrific things you have to say. So we're going to get to it here in just a second. Allow me to remind you, it is an interactive podcast, whether you want to answer the Canadiens Connection question of the week, or if you just have feedback or a question or a comment that you'd like to make, send us a text anytime on the Rocket Sports text line. That's 585-3-ROCKET. I'll say that again, 585-3-ROCKET. You can text us at any time. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at Habs Connection. And you can always check out our full catalog of episodes. This is episode 318, so the catalog is pretty expansive. You can always go back and listen to any of our shows on CanadiensConnection.fm. And it also gives you a way to figure out which podcast platform you'd like to use to listen to the show and subscribe from there. So let's start with what's happened since last week's show. Of course, last Saturday night, Montreal and Ottawa faced off. And Montreal handled themselves pretty well against the Senators. Emil Heineman scoring his first NHL goal, which was pretty fun to watch.
He's got a shot.
Yes, he does.
I think that's what we all know. He's
preaching that all last year while he was playing in Laval.
Yeah, incredible release.
Yeah, absolutely. Cole Caulfield, 2 more goals for him that night, which was pretty special. Lane Hutson getting a couple of helpers on the board. It was a pretty overall. It was a very offensively exciting game to watch. It
was a second good start for Sam Montembeault. It was a good team game, and against a team that the Canadiens, if they expect to be in the mix, they're going to have to win games against Ottawa, against Buffalo, against teams that they're going to be competing for that, maybe competing for that last playoff spot. So this was an important game.
Now, Monday night, which was Thanksgiving Day for all of our Canadian listeners, the Canadiens had a rare Monday night game playing on the holiday that evening. I'd say the only good things about their game against Pittsburgh that they dropped 6-3 was Kaiden Guhle getting on the score sheet for the first time this season and Heineman scoring in back-to-back games. But I'm not going to lie, I was slightly happy for Lars Eller potting 2 goals against his old team.
Yeah, Marty.
I can't help but be happy for him.
Yeah, no, I understand. Lars is a great guy and really, was kind of stifled in Montreal and found his way when he left, won a Stanley Cup, all of that, all of those good things. 2 goals, actually kind of carbon copy goals, beat Sam Montembeault high. Which is the book on Sam Montembeault, Weak Love Hand. You may not want to hear that, but that's the NHL book. Scouts will tell you that. And Lars Eller shouldn't be beating you.
No.
Yeah, Sam Montembeault really struggled in this game. He did not look good. But the Canadiens themselves didn't look good. And Marty St. Louis blamed it on a slow start, a poor start. Of course, coaches should be responsible for the starts of their team, but this was not a good game for the Montreal Canadiens.
If they were looking for a bounce back on Thursday night, playing against the LA Kings, who had just gotten trounced by Toronto the night before, well, that didn't happen. My notes for this game just say eek. 4-1 loss to LA. Again, at least a positive out of it. Justin Barron got his first of the season. He opened the scoring. But boy, this game was a mess. This game was just upside down. It was a mess. Lane Hutson did yeoman's work on the blue line, but almost too much, if you ask me.
Well, yeah, played 30 minutes and 5 seconds in the game against Los Angeles. And that's because Mike Matheson left the game in the first period.
Yep.
It was. I mean, Lane Hutson did everything he could do, but the Canadiens were. It was funny because after the Penguins game. Michel Therrien, remember him? And I'm not saying you should always pay attention to what Michel Therrien is saying. But after the Pittsburgh game, he said, okay, on Thursday night against the Kings, we're going to see what the Montreal Canadiens are made of.
You might want to walk that
back. He wasn't impressed. The Canadiens had 5 power play opportunities and squandered those, allowed a shorthanded goal. Marty St. Louis counted 14 turnovers in the first period by his team. And the Canadian and the Kings had every reason to lose this game.
They did.
Every reason to lose. It was their third game in 4. It was back-to-back. Remember, the Canadiens can't win back-to-backs. Well, the Kings apparently can after they were trounced in Toronto. And David Riddick had a tough game, but David Riddick comes in, and the Canadiens can only get one on him. And the Kings have been on this massive road trip because their arena is being renovated. So we remember they started in their road trip on October 1st, I think, something like that, where their preseason was in Quebec City, and then like a 7-game road trip to start the season. So the Kings had every reason to lose. And Marty St. Louis, I think it was Jake Evans, Nick Suzuki, all used the word immature. That's not to blame the loss on the young players, because Lane Hutson, for one, looked pretty good in that game. It was immature in the sense of trying to do too much and not taking what the game was giving and all that. Marty St. Louis, and we'll talk about this a bit more later, but he wants to see more chip and chase hockey. Of course, that doesn't apply to Lane Hutson. No. Let Lane Hutson do as many zone entries as he likes. But Marty wants to see heavy forecheck, wants to see the Canadiens going in after it. He doesn't want to see the long shifts, and I think this was aimed at the Canadiens' top line, who often extend their shifts and try to do a little too much. So, a lot of angst after that game against Los Angeles.
So a little bit of pressure on Saturday night when the Habs take on the Islanders to see if they can turn around this kind of 2-game skid that's been really ugly this week so far. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit here. So that puts the Canadiens 2-3 on the season. They have 4 points on the season so far. They're 25th in the NHL.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that in the what exactly is that in the mix of?
Well, it's in the mix of the bottom, but and it's early, and all of that. You can't evaluate a team. You can't evaluate a team until it's played 20 games or so. But and we'll talk about the schedule later. But the schedule was set up for the Canadiens to bank some points here. So because that in the mix phrase was used, meaning, well, depends on, they left it vague, I think, to so everybody can interpret that the way they like. But at present, the Canadiens have a 6.2% chance of making the playoffs, and they're on pace for a 76-point season.
Well, that's fun. Don't forget, you can follow our daily Habs posts all season long, actually all year long, on X. Just follow @Rocket Sports. Check out our game previews and game recaps on hockeybuzz.com and jump into the comment section as well. There's a very lively comment section on Hockey Buzz, and we love to interact with our readers on the comment section there. So jump in there, post your comments. And remember, we have exclusive video content on our YouTube channel that you can check out at InsideTheCanadiens.com. As far as the roster report, I think some people might have been taken a bit aback when Alex Barré-Boulet was placed on waivers on Sunday. I think had he not had that one-way NHL contract attached to him, he likely would have been claimed, but he wasn't, and that meant that he was assigned to the Laval Rocket this past Monday. we've said plenty of times here on this show. I have said it on Rocket Hockey Report and Habs Hockey Report on our YouTube channel. Alex Barré-Boulet is a very, very, very good AHL player, but not somebody that I believe you can consistently rely on in the NHL. And so for me, I wasn't necessarily surprised to see him get put on waivers, but I know that there were fans who were excited about him that might be a little disappointed that he's not still up with the Habs.
Yeah, and that's understandable for fans who haven't seen him play before. He is an AHL caliber player and excels at that level.
Yes,
Doesn't excel very well in at the NHL level, and that was proven in Tampa Bay and Syracuse. He can, when he wants to, turn it on for short stints, can look good on the power play. In offensive hockey, his effort level goes up and down. Most times he's on cruise control, but he can ramp up his, for short stints. And maybe that's how he'll be used throughout the season to bring him up to fill a hole for a game or two and won't look out of place. But belongs at the AHL level. And let's be honest, he was outplayed by Heineman and Kapanen in the preseason, and the Canadiens have more invested in Kapanen and Heineman as future prospects. They know what they got in Barré-Boulet, and like I say, he can fill a hole from time to time.
In good news, speaking of prospects, Jayden Struble has recovered from his upper body injury and has been cleared to play, although has not yet been inserted into the lineup.
Yeah, interesting that he has been cleared for the week, although he didn't get into a game. And all Marty would say is if he hadn't been out of the lineup, he'd be in the lineup, that he's missed time, and so we don't want to rush him in. Right. But I expect we're going to see with the injuries we're going to talk about, we're going to see him sooner than later.
Probably. Good news on the Raphael Harvey-Pinard front. He skated this week, so it sounds like that HP is making some progress in his injury rehab.
Remember, he had an injury an off-season injury, broken leg, had surgery at the end of July, and so this is the first time. Skated solo with one of the therapists, but good to see him back on the ice.
Now, a little bit of a scary thing for Kaiden Guhle in Thursday night's game. Was it Adrian Kempe?
I believe it was.
Yeah, who got tangled up. Had a big hit on him going in towards the boards. Guhle got his arms up in front of him because we know concussion has been an issue, so I'm sure he was protecting his head. He played the rest of the game, but now is out, considered day-to-day with an upper body injury. So we're wondering, I know you and I had messaged about this on Saturday during the game, that you had noted that he was shaking his wrist a bit when he got up, so wondering if hopefully, I never like to hope for an injury, but in this case, I'm hoping it's his wrist and not his head. We'll see how that all works out and how long he'll be out.
Yeah, he protected, as you said, the game on Thursday against the Kings. He protected himself, so he didn't have a head injury, but maybe a wrist injury, hand injury, when he went into the boards awkwardly.
Now, as you mentioned, Matheson left Thursday's game early. He left in the first period. And so that actually looked to be where Guhle finished the game. Matheson didn't. And then Matheson didn't practice on Friday. So kind of thought that it was going to be Matheson who was day-to-day with an injury. Well, it turned out the Canadiens announced that it was just a therapy day for Matheson. So whatever happened, he wasn't able to finish the game and obviously needed an extra day of recuperation, but apparently not on the injury list.
So as far as the road game against the Islanders in New York, Matheson traveled, Guhle did not. So the Canadiens will be missing a defenseman, and we'll see who will fill in for Guhle. And there's still some question whether Matheson will play or not.
That's right. Speaking of who traveled and who's playing, this weird thing happened on Friday at practice in Brassard. Slafkovsky left practice early, didn't return, and then the reports are now out that he is traveling, that he traveled to New York, but no one's certain if he's actually going to play or not. So we have no idea what happened during practice. We don't know if he's going to play. It's very mysterious.
Yeah. He practiced for about 20 minutes. It's the word is that it's a hand injury of some sort. Marty was asked and said, yes, he's traveling. When asked if he'd play on Saturday night, Marty said, I don't know.
Okay. So that would be an interesting thing to keep an eye on as well. In response to, and I think most people had made the assumption that this call-up happened because of Matheson's injury. It turns out it was more likely because of Guhle's injury, but I'm going to dust off my shoulder a little bit because the Rocket Hockey Report video I put out on Tuesday this week was titled, Logan Mailloux has earned himself a call-up already with the phenomenal game he had in the season opener. And guess what? It's happened. Logan Mailloux recalled from the Laval Rocket the morning of their home opener. So he did not participate in their home opener on Friday night because he was too busy up in Brassard practicing with the Habs. So we'll see, Rick, if he gets into a lineup or not. You mentioned that it's a question mark of how many defensemen are going to be out. If there's only one defenseman, which one's it going to be?
Yeah, is it going to be Struble? Is it going to be Mailloux? Is it going to be both? We don't know. Thursday night was the first time we saw, during the game, Marty St. Louis has changed his defense pairings, and that's mostly because Xhekaj's been struggling. David Savard's been struggling. But Thursday night was the first time that from the start of the game, the pairings were Guhle-Hudson, which has been the best defense pairing so far this season, Matheson-Barron. That seemed to help Barron and Xhekaj Savard. Now, with Guhle out, what's going to happen there, and how are the pairings going to be balanced? We'll see that on Saturday night against the Islanders.
Absolutely. So Saturday morning, the Canadiens did not have a morning skate on Saturday morning. But we do know that after two not-so-great showings by Sam Montembeault, he's going to get a break on Saturday night, and it is going to be Kaiden Primo in the crease for the Montreal Canadiens.
So the Canadiens' second road game of the second road game of the season. Kaiden Primo got the first road game in Boston. That was a rough start for him. And he's been sitting more than a week with that on his mind, unfortunately. We were saying we would have expected to see him against Los Angeles, but that was a home game. So he's going to get the next Habs road game against the Isles, and hopefully a better effort.
We will see. All right. Let's switch gears slightly just for a moment and get to the Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
All right. Well, we're going to do something today that we don't usually do. It's kind of even a rule of ours that we're breaking. Shocking, I know. But there's a good reason for it. We usually do not duplicate the prospect that we highlight in this segment from week to week. We usually don't go back to back because that's not fair to there's a lot of prospects to get to. However, I know we talked about him last week, but we are going back to Boston College goaltender Jacob Fowler again this week because, well, Rick, I'll let you tell the people why he earned the accolade of Hockey East Goaltender of the Week, but it's certainly deserving of us tapping him for our prospect highlight again this week.
Yeah. So he's only played 3 games in college, played Michigan State twice. But in 2 games, he has 2 shutouts. He has a 2-1 record, 135 goals against, 945 save percentage, and 2 shutouts in 3 games.
All right, then.
So in the most recent game on Friday night, stopped 20 shots for his second shutout. And yes, was named Hockey East Goaltender of the Week. So we can't ignore that. He is again in the spotlight as our prospect of the week. Jacob Fowler, 2 shutouts in 3 games played.
If Fowler keeps performing like that, and if Dobish keeps performing the way he has, Caden Primo might want to step things up against the Islanders tonight. Might start getting a little hot under the collar, because there's guys coming for your job, young man.
As every position.
As every position.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's right. All right, we have to give you an Ivan Demidov update because this has now turned into a saga. It started as, rumors and headlines for a few weeks. Then it started to become kind of silly, and now it's just becoming a saga. He plays a few shifts, he scores a goal, and then he doesn't play for like 2.5 periods. It's insane. And SKA head coach Roman Rotenberg actually he's really starting to get asked about it a lot in the media, and he had some interesting comments in response this week.
Yeah, he certainly doesn't like being questioned. He doesn't like his decisions being questioned. Demidov played Tuesday, played Thursday. Both were wins for SKA St. Petersburg. On Tuesday, a goal, played 13 minutes and 49 seconds. Played just over 9 minutes on Thursday, was a +3 in that game and picked up an assist. Oftentimes, though, he'll play the first 2 periods and then get sat for the third period. There was one game this week he committed a turnover and immediately that was it for the period. The punishment is harsh, absolutely harsh. But at least this week anyway, he had been averaging 4 minutes a game in October. So at least the ice time's coming up a little bit. But again, as you said, Rotenberg was asked, what's the deal? And he, every time that a journalist asks about ice time, Rotenberg's, there's a quick quip back to, you must be American, or, you must follow the NHL if you're asking about ice time. We don't follow ice time here and blah, blah, blah. But his comment this week was, he suggested that player agents are influencing the type of stories that are written by sports journalists in Canada. And he went further. He said, I hope this isn't the case. But wouldn't surprise me if sports journalists are being paid by player agents to write stories about ice time that are negative, and inferring that that's what was going on with Demidov. That the reason that fans are so watching about ice time and so concerned about it, and so concerned about SKA and so concerned about Rotenberg is because the journalists are getting some money under the table to write those negative stories about the way he coaches.
That's an outrageous accusation.
It's outrageous. It's just, I don't how stupid that is. I don't.
Conspiracy theories are going to be a common theme in this first segment. You're going to find out in a moment.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
And boy, oh boy, the thing that gets me too, it's just an outrageous statement and accusation to make, both on behalf of agents, and you're now taking into question the journalistic integrity of any journalist who has discussed and criticized the ice time that Demidov is getting. It's just unacceptable for a head coach to do that. I also found it odd that in a different article, in a different interview, where he was getting pressed about, what's the deal, then he tried to shape it in terms of, well, sometimes with certain players, you coach them for a particular moment. And so, you get him out on the ice and he scores that big goal, and that's what he needed to do in that moment.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to have him sit for just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop. And we're going to hear Jeff Gorton's going to have some comments about how he's been handled coming up here in just a few minutes in this segment that you're going to want to hear, because it's obvious that the Canadiens are also keeping a close eye on this situation.
And we should say, on the other hand, the Journal de Montreal talked to an agent from Gold Star Hockey, and not the agent that represents Demidov, but just in general talking. And he said, there's nothing unusual here, that this is kind of the way things happen. He referred to Michkov, and with Michkov getting sent to their junior league, he was nailed to the bench by SK at times, but sent to the junior league. That's not going to happen with Demidov because he's playing too well.
Right.
But they discussed, and there are rumors out there that Demidov was three times presented with a contract extension to extend his contract that ends this year by 2 years, and he refused every time, and that's the reason he's being punished. There was no confirmation of any of that by anybody, but as an explanation for the way he's being punished. But for the
such a soap opera.
It is a soap opera, and it's unfortunate for a very talented player and a prospect that's being followed very closely, obviously, because Canadiens fans are concerned.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you're right to draw the comparison with what Michkov went through last year. And it was the same thing in Philadelphia. Philadelphia fans were frustrated. The team was getting frustrated. Everyone was very excited for him to come over to North America. And now that he's gotten here, he's free to be the hockey player that he wants to be, and he's doing pretty well so far. So hopefully Canadiens fans get to celebrate the same thing when Demidov is hopefully here next year. Quickly, we'll just talk about how the Laval Rocket has fared since last week. They closed out their opening weekend on the road last Saturday night, but with a trip to Springfield facing off against the Thunderbirds. It was a much more tightly played than the Friday night game in Providence. Owen Beck and Philip Meshar had a good night, but overall, it was not the best effort that Laval could put together in just their second game. They dropped that one 3-1. And if you head over to our YouTube channel, InsideTheCanadiens.com, and just look for Tuesday's edition of Rocket Hockey Report, that video, I'll give you the full breakdown of both of those games last week, as well as talk extensively about Logan Mailloux' performance and the other prospects as well. They then had off all week this week. This month, they don't play a midweek game until the last week of the month this month. So they're only playing Friday, Saturday games all month until the last week. And so Friday night was their home opener, finally. And it was a very well-produced event, as they typically do. Playing against Syracuse this weekend in 2 games. They also play them again this afternoon in a matinee. Syracuse is a bitter rival of Laval's. It's now coached by Joel Bouchard. And Jesse Ullinen, Toby Paquette-Bisson, and Joel Teasdale are all on the roster now. So and I should note that Place Bell, the Rocket, did make sure that during one of the TV timeouts that those 3 players were acknowledged and welcomed back to Place Bell. And they had a big third. It was a tight game, 2-2 through 2 periods, but Laval really opened things up in the third period and won this one 5-2. I will say I'm a little disappointed in some of the lineup choices and the scratches for the home opener. I'm going to talk about that much more in depth on this coming Tuesday's edition of Rocket Hockey Report on our YouTube channel. So again, be sure to go to InsideTheCanadiens.com, hit subscribe and the notification bell because you're not going to want to miss when that video comes out on Tuesday.
So many elements in play at this game, the home opener, so it's going to be exciting as it was. You have Pascal Vincent coaching his first as head coach of the Laval Rockets, his first game in Laval. Pascal Vincent versus Joel Bouchard. Daniel Jacob back with Laval, the sidekick of Bouchard, and the former Rocket players that you mentioned, and the fact that, if you don't follow Laval, I can tell you that the rivalries, some of the rivalries carry over from the NHL in terms of Toronto and Belleville, the Ottawa affiliate. But Syracuse is a big rival. The games are always...
These teams hate each other.
They do. And
no matter who's on the roster, they hate each other.
And no matter if they play in Laval or Syracuse and the fans get involved, they're always tough games, Laval, Syracuse.
Vincent Arsenault off early in the game with a completely broken finger because of a fight he got into. Yikes. I mean, cameras caught his ring finger on his left hand was definitely not pointing in the right direction. And he popped it back into place himself, screaming as he went off the ice. It was quite a game.
Yeah.
So I expect that Saturday's matinee rematch is going to be equally intense. So we'll catch all of that. We'll catch up on it next week on the show. But if you want the in-depth analysis, catch Rocket Hockey Report on our YouTube channel on Tuesday. In the ECHL, the Trois-Rivières Lions are underway. Did not come out with a successful game on Friday night against the Reading Royals, but just a 1-goal deficit.
Yeah, their home opener. And speaking of rivalries, the Reading Royals against Trois-Rivières, they're always interesting games, tough games. Trois-Rivières.
That's the Flyers ECHL.
The Flyers ECHL affiliate. Yeah, you're right. Trois-Rivières seemed to run into penalty trouble, and a power play goal for Reading kind of sealed it. And we'll have more about the makeup of the roster and how they're doing as their season goes along.
Absolutely. All right, so I want to circle back now to what we just talked about on Ivan Demidov, and I promised that we were going to have some interesting quotes coming up from Jeff Gorton, who appeared on RDS and TSN 690 this week. He did a bit of a media tour just to talk about how the Habs have started the season. Before we get to what he had to say about the situation with Demidov, started with kind of his reaction and his assessment of who he felt really stood out at Canadiens training camp this year.
Listen, there's some young guys there I think that played well that we didn't necessarily have a spot for. I thought Dobish played really good and showed us what it could look like down the road. I thought Emil Heineman had a really good camp and made our team. I thought the Kapanen, he showed enough to be here to keep looking to see what it could look like for us. So to put him in opportunities to see what might be next and how we can use them. So there was a lot of guys. As far as the veterans, I feel like Jake Evans has been a pretty solid guy for us throughout camp. He probably doesn't get a lot of accolades. You don't hear much about him, but from day one in camp, I feel like he came to, he's in the final year of his contract, trying to assert himself and show us, he wants to be part of it going forward.
Fascinating answer. Jakob.
Good for you, Jake Evans.
The first player out of his mouth is Jakob Dobish.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting, fascinating, and a brilliant assessment. Jakob Dobish had a great camp. In our bold predictions, I said Jakob Dobish is going to play some games for the Montreal Canadiens this season. And you heard him there, Jeff Gorton, talking about the future, what the future is going to look like. Didn't have a spot for him this year, but was impressed with Dobish. Said that Heineman had a really good camp. I thought so too.
Yep.
Kapanen did enough to earn a spot. Maybe a half step below Heineman in his eyes. And again, picking out Jake Evans as far as his veteran to key on, and that group of players who are in the last year of their contract. Picking out Jake Evans, I agree 100%, and it's Jake Evans over Christian Dvorak as far as who's centering that third line. Jake Evans, very underrated. I thought he emerged at the end of last season, taking on more responsibility and picked up where he left off in training camp and has been very good so far.
Now, one player who has maybe been a little under the radar, and we'd like to see him less so, is Kirby Dach. We know Kirby Dach is coming off of an extensive injury rehab. Some people are already starting to get a bit concerned about, why hasn't he looked like we expect Kirby Dach to look? And here's how Jeff Gorton responded to that.
Basically, what he went through, he just alluded to it. We knew it would be it would be out of the gate would be the hard part, not playing games for so long. So we're seeing flashes of Kirby, but it's hard. He's a very physical player, and he puts his body on the line every shift, and so he's just getting in game shape. You can do whatever you want in the summertime to get ready, and these guys all do, and they're all in incredible shape. But until you play NHL games in the regular season, we can't duplicate that for him. So he's going through that. We see signs of him coming out of it, but it's only a matter of time. But of course, we knew coming into the season that he's going to need a little bit of time before he pops.
So we knew it would take time. They were aware of and if you want a comparison, look at Cole Caulfield's season last year. Although Cole Caulfield, I think he started with 2 or 3 goals early in the season, but then there were large gaps between his scoring last year, and it was his first season after surgery. And Jeff Gorton saying, it was expected that Kirby would take time. They've seen flashes, is the word that he used, of the Kirby Dach that they're expecting, but that the type of game he plays, so physical, it's been tough for him to. He said he came to camp in shape, but it's tough to recreate that experience for him of playing a physical NHL game night in, night out.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the key word here is just patience. I think it's encouraging that Jeff Gorton says that we're seeing flashes of Kirby Dach, and so that says that they see that the Kirby Dach we all know and expect is in there. He just needs the time, and we just have to be a little patient with him. We promised Jeff Gorton's thoughts on what's going on with Ivan Demidov. Here's what his take is.
Because of the situation with the KHL not having an agreement, with the league, we can't just end his contract anytime we want. Everybody thinks we can buy him out of his contract. It's not realistic. He's got the 1 year left, and
this year?
Yes, this year. So, listen, we're really excited about this player. He is very talented. We've seen what you see. We see the ice time dipping. We are in contact with the organization, and they know how we feel, and this is the number one reason why when we have a player like that, or any organization does, you want to sign him and get him over and control all of it right away. So a little bit out of our control right now, and frustrated that he's not playing more, but at the same time, we know he's a very gifted player. Yeah. We also know their team has 35 players on it, and that's what traditionally they've been doing. So. Yeah. We're going to be patient, and we're excited for when he comes over here.
Very complete answer from Jeff Gorton, and basically answered all of the Canadiens fans who are screaming, bring him to Montreal, buy him out, end his contract, do whatever you have to do. And Jeff Gorton said it's not realistic. It's not that simple. Given that there's no NHL, KHL agreement anymore, This is their player. He has a contract with that team and has to fulfill the terms of that contract. He said that, they're watching. They're watching just like fans are. He said we're fans too, and wish that he could be playing 20 to 25 minutes a game in all situations. He said, and he said in another interview that they're talking to the team a lot, and so that might not make Mr. Rotenberg very happy either. They're watching his shifts. They're watching his ice time. They know that they have a very talented player, a very gifted player, but they understand that it's basically out of their control. And he mentioned too, I thought, which was a really good piece to this puzzle, that the team is carrying 35 players. So it's difficult finding ice time for all of them.
I give him credit for that little nugget, and for how very measured he started this answer. But I also find it quite, I have to chuckle every time I listen to this clip, because the longer he went on, the more critical he started to get. He was still professional, he was still diplomatic, but you could hear the annoyance creep in a little more and more as this answer went on. So yeah, Jeff Gorton and the Canadiens are obviously frustrated, but they're, as you say, their hands are tied. There's nothing that they can do. And so that they know that once they get him over here, it's going to be a completely different situation, and they just have to ride this season out and hope that he gets something out of this season over there.
Let me add something that's just off topic, but it was something that Jeff Gorton was asked about, and it came out of the, if you've been watching the behind the scenes, the rebuild program, it was suggested in there that Kent Hughes has a fear of bridges. So on this media tour this week, Jeff Gorton says, does Kent Hughes have a fear of bridges? And so he told this little anecdote about that the two of them spend a lot of time together, obviously, whether it's in the press box or meeting and all of that. But they drive, he said they live in the same building, so they often commute together, or they'll drive to games and or to see a prospect, they'll drive together. And Jeff Gorton said that, Kent Hughes will be driving and they'll be driving along, and all of a sudden Kent Hughes will pull over. And he'll say, "Can you take the wheel? Can you take the driver's seat? You got to do this, because it will be that they're coming up to a bridge." And he'll turn the driver's seat over to Jeff Gorton so he can drive over the bridge. And the fear is that real.
Wow.
For Kent Hughes.
Well, it's funny. Gorton even alluded to that. He appeared on the first intermission report on Thanksgiving night, on Monday night, on
Prime Hockey.
On Prime Hockey, yeah. And it's funny because Mike Johnson said to him, been watching the rebuild and you're a TV star now, and we're so glad that you're here, and glad to know that you're the calm one compared to Kent Hughes.
Yeah.
And Jeff Gorton casually, just as an aside, chuckled and said, "Well, I'm glad it's obvious, particularly when we go over bridges." And that's all he said. And then the interview went on. And anybody who hasn't seen that episode would have no idea what he was talking about. But that's twice this week he's thrown Kent Hughes under the bus.
They have a great relationship,
They do.
obviously.
They really do. All right, we're going to switch to just some hockey news, but actually the first news bite that we have pertains to the Canadiens as well. It's come out. There's a La Presse article this week from Simon Olivier Larange that apparently Francois Gagnon revealed on RDS during the first intermission of Thursday night's game that apparently and reportedly, allegedly, the Canadiens are going to play a preseason match in Quebec at the Videotron Center next year.
Yeah. And they've done this before. It's been a while. But we remember, the Los Angeles Kings that were in town on Thursday, I said they started their preseason in Quebec City, and that was very controversial because the Quebec government paid the Los Angeles Kings to bring their exhibition games to the Colisée, and then it was even more controversial when the Canadiens had offered. It was revealed that the Canadiens had offered to play there for free. They were going to do it. So now this hasn't been confirmed by the Montreal Canadiens, but Francois Gagnon, RDS, had said that this is in the works and that the Canadiens and Senators will likely play a preseason game somewhere around September 30th of next year.
Well, we'll see if that comes to fruition. I'm sure fans in Quebec City will be very excited about that. If we look around the league, there are a few teams that are still undefeated at this second week of the season. Winnipeg and Calgary are both 4-0, and Tampa Bay is 3-0.
Two Canadian teams are yet unbeaten. We'll see what happens going into Saturday's action, but yeah, nice to see the Canadian teams doing well.
Absolutely. Another big contract extension announced this week on Thursday. The Dallas Stars signed goaltender Jake Ottinger to an 8-year, $66 million extension that will pay him an AAV of just over $8 million.
I like this goaltender. I have for
You
a
always
while,
choose
for
this
a
guy.
long time. Yeah, I choose him in fantasy.
Yeah.
And he's a big reason why I think, well, you heard my predictions as far as who might go to the Stanley Cup, and I think Jake Ottinger is a big reason is why Dallas will have a very good season.
Now that is a contract extension. This next piece of news is about league expansion. Don't worry, it's not the NHL. It's the ECHL. On Friday, their Board of Governors announced that they'd approved Greensboro, North Carolina, as for an expansion application to be admitted into the ECHL for the 25-26 season. And that is great news because that will get next year, that will get the ECHL to 30 teams. And Rick, I know that the commissioner has talked about they really want to get to 32 teams in the ECHL so that every NHL franchise and every subsequent AHL franchise also has an ECHL affiliate as well.
Yeah, good for Greensboro, North Carolina. This team will be owned by Zoyer Sports and Entertainment. They already own some teams in the ECHL, the Jacksman Icemen, Savannah Ghost Pirates, love these names, and an AHL team, the Charlotte Checkers. Did I miss one? I think I missed one. Tahoe Night Monsters, they also own. So how could I forget the Tahoe Night Monsters?
That's a relative. Yeah, the Ghost Pirates are relatively new. I think the Tahoe Night Monsters are one of the newer ones.
Yeah, they're an affiliate of Vegas Golden Knights. So nice to see the ECHL growing and trying to match up teams, an ECHL team for every NHL team.
That's right. We mentioned this a minute ago when we were talking about Jeff Gorton, and I said that he appeared on the first intermission on Monday night's game for an interview segment in the first intermission with Mudryk and Mike Johnson. But you correctly said, yes, that was Prime Monday Night Hockey, and that was the debut of Amazon Prime Monday Night Hockey for Prime Canada viewers. And that's an important distinction that I'm not sure that every fan around the league was maybe completely aware of, that this was only available for Prime Canada viewers. But it made its debut in Montreal, now the exclusive English language broadcaster of all national NHL games in Canada on Monday nights. And this was the first of 5 times this season that the Canadiens will appear.
So if it's a Monday night game, it's going to be on Amazon Prime Video. I thought they did a pretty good job as far as the production quality, the play-by-play. John Forsland did
a great job.
He's a very good play-by-play guy, and with a lot of experience. Shane Knighty, they had a guy down at the bench as well as a 3-person broadcast team. His name escapes me right now.
Former defenseman.
NHL, NHL defenseman. But I thought the broadcast team was great.
Yeah.
The intermission panel was left a little bit to be desired, but
Mark Messier was okay.
so does the intermission panel on, Hockey Night in Canada. So, I thought it was good. Gary Bettman was in Montreal on Monday, and he was there because of Amazon Prime Video, and he's a big supporter. And he basically said, not quoting him, but in so many words, cable's dead. And so we're going to be looking to these services when we start negotiating contracts in the future, which can only mean more splintered coverage, which is not going to please fans necessarily. But if you're a fan of the NFL, you know that games are being divided up in different ways. You can't just go to one network anymore, and it looks like that's the direction that the NHL is going as well.
We'll see how that works out. It has its downsides as well. Any English language fans of the Canadiens living in Canada who don't have a Prime subscription did not get to watch their team play on Monday night on a national game in English. They then all had to tune in to RDS. So there are some downsides to it, obviously, but overall, yes, their production quality was very good. We're gonna wrap up this segment and get you all ready for our 5 up and 5 down. 5 players impressing, 5 players struggling segment that's coming up here in a minute. We're going to wrap up this segment. I said that conspiracy theories might be a common theme in this segment, and we're going to end with a bit of an odd story regarding a journalist in Montreal, beat reporter Jeremy Filosa getting suspended from his job duties at 98.5 because of something very unique that he said on the air this week.
This is just weird. Jeremy Filosa, we know Jeremy Filosa, he's a beat reporter, been one for a long time for covering the Montreal Canadiens. He was on the old Habs 360 podcast with Chris. This started innocently enough, 98.5 FM, Philippe Canton, who we also know, and said, hey, there's a supermoon coming. And there was, and it was gorgeous. It was beautiful. If you had a clear sky to see it. And oddly, surprisingly, Jeremy Filosa said, quote, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I no longer believe that man walked on the moon. And Philippe was just flabbergasted, and the whole thing got real intense. And he said, Philippe said, I think you're reading too many unreliable websites. And then, they went back and forth, and it was ugly. And Kojiko in 98.5 suspended Filosa and have disassociated themselves from the comments he made. They said his opinion is his own, and in no case do Kojiko Media 98.5 endorse these type of negative comments. So he's been taken off the air for an indefinite period of time. Very bizarre story to end this segment.
Very, very bizarre. What's not bizarre is the fantastic segment we have coming up next. 5 players impressing, 5 players struggling. Are you going to agree with them? Are you going to have more that you think we should have added? Well, you're going to want to stick around for it. First, we're going to hear from our friends over at DraftKings. They have a very special incentive for all of you listening and watching at home. And we'll be back on the other side of this break. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
The quest for the Stanley Cup starts now. The puck's dropping on the 2024-25 season. Get in on all the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking your favorite team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers Bet just $5 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved.
And welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. Once again, my name is Amy Johnson. If you'd like to follow me on X or Twitter, however you refer to it, you can find me at Flyers Rule. And of course, with me in the studio once again is our president and founder here at Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. Be sure that you are following him on X at Rocket Sports. Also, follow our podcast at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe to the Canadiens Connection podcast right on the player that you're listening to. If you're watching on YouTube, then you can hit subscribe there as well. Whatever your favorite podcast app is, it's really easy to find us and subscribe. Rick, you mentioned earlier in the show that the Canadiens have a very home-friendly schedule to start the season in October. They play 7 home games and 4 away games. So it should be really, really easy for them to bank a bunch of points early in the season. But yikes, it hasn't worked out that way for them at all.
No, it seems that the schedule was set up. And even when we're talking about those 4 away games that you mentioned, they're one-offs, 4 one-game road trips. And each of them are short hops to Boston, to New York, to Philadelphia, to Washington. All of that's going to change in November, although and where it flips, and the first 2 weeks of November are a lot of road games. Now again, New Jersey, Toronto, Buffalo, they're not. We're not talking about a Western road trip here, but still, things are going to get more difficult, and we've seen that it was tough in Boston getting the matchups they wanted. So these home games, this homestand that's been put together for them, they really need to start, as you said, banking some points.
So we're going to take a look in this segment at individual performances 5 games into the season and do an early season edition of 5 up and 5 down. 5 players who are impressing, 5 players who have stepped up, 5 players who are overachieving perhaps, and 5 players who are a bit of a disappointment or are struggling or are slipping or underperforming. We're actually going to start with the 5 down first. We'll end things on a more positive note. So the first guy that really comes on that list, unfortunately, is Arbor Xhekaj. He himself this week admits that he has not performed well in these first games of the season, that he knows there's things that he needs to improve on. And we have said it over and over again. If he is not careful, Jayden Struble is just hovering on the sideline, just gnawing at the bit to get out there. And we've already seen guys steal jobs already this season. Arbor Xhekaj really needs to step things up.
Yeah, he might get a bit of a respite given that there's some injuries that are happening. But the Canadiens like Arbor Xhekaj. Fans like Arbor Xhekaj. He's a fan favorite.
I like watching Arbor Xhekaj.
But the Canadiens are going to give him a long leash, but he has not looked very good so far. He's struggled. And as you said, he said, I'm not too happy with my game so far. I've lacked consistency. I have to fix that, and that's what I'm focusing on. He said, I'm too much in my head. and thinking about the game. And he said, I've got to focus on my physical game, and playing with a little more emotion should help me out. So he's struggling on the ice. He looks overwhelmed at times. Whether he's struggling with his new defensive system or not, I think that can apply to more than just Xhekaj. And on that, in with respect to the system, when we talked about that last week, if you want to go back to episode 317 and we explain it, what this hybrid system is all about, and it's odd because coming into the season, Nick Suzuki said, Marty St. Louis said, we have a lot of the same players. It's a lot of carryover. Everybody's familiar with the system. There's nothing to learn, so we're just going to pick up where we left off. And then they changed the systems. And Jeff Gorton, we were talking about Jeff Gorton, he made a point of that in preseason. He said, we changed the systems. Didn't explain it too much more than that. But it seems that some of the players, in particular Arber Xhekaj, is having to think too much about the system and who he's supposed to cover and how those handoffs occur on the ice, that he's too much in his head and he needs to go back to his game, which is playing physical.
I'll add another layer to that as far as my theory on this, as well as in terms of him talking about how he's too much in his head. I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a big part of it. I think another part of it is, yes, there is much more intense internal competition this year, and Arber Xhekaj has firsthand experience with knowing that he does not have immunity from being sent down to Laval, because that's what happened to him last year, and it threw him for a loop when he got sent down to Laval. It ended up being a very positive experience for him, but I think that he's afraid that that's going to happen again, and that could be getting in his head a little bit too much as well.
Just a note, that's going to change partway through the season, where he's got that waiver immunity now. That'll change. We'll figure out the number of games, but partway through the season,
where he'll then be no longer waiver exempt, and he would have to be exposed to waivers to send him down. The next guy on our 5 down list, sorry. Again, another defenseman. Sorry, David Savard, but you have to be on this list. Are you a mentor? Yes. Are you a good veteran in the locker room? Yes. Are you a defensive liability? Also yes. Because it has not been good for David Savard. He's made some really egregious mistakes that have directly led to goals so far this season. Yeah,
he's looked really rough. And I know the reason that he was moved to the pairing with Arber Xhekaj was to help Arber Xhekaj, but also to lessen the minutes that David Savard was on the ice. I think he's a -6 thereabouts, and he was like a -4 in one game. He is that leader, but on the ice he looks slow. And it looks difficult for him to process the game, and we saw a little bit of that last season. And we know what happens with defensemen of a certain age and vintage. and type of game that they play, and he's a plodding stay-at-home defenseman. That their performance just at some point will fall off a cliff, and that has certainly happened early on in the season for David Savard.
We did touch on this already, but we will circle back around to say, unfortunately, even though we understand why it's happening and we understand that patience is a virtue with this player, we have to include Kirby Dach on this list of our 5 down as player number 3, because while it may not be any fault of his own, he just hasn't obviously gotten comfortable yet. He's not back up to game conditioning yet, and he certainly doesn't yet have the confidence to play the way they need Kirby Dach to play, and so he has not been effective to this point.
Yeah, and Kirby's not happy with his game. No. You saw how frustrated he got in the preseason that he couldn't do the things that he wants to be able to do. We talked about plus minus, and yes, plus minus is not it's not a statistic that's relevant individually, but comparatively, it is. He's the worst on the Canadiens with a -7, 35% at the faceoff. Faceoffs have never been strong for Kirby, but and just the one assist, he's just struggling to play that physical game. He's struggling to play at speed, to process at speed. There's little flashes that you see Kirby, and he's getting lots of opportunity on he's on the first wave of the power play. But it's going to take time, and it might take the entire season for him to get back to the player that we saw before.
Now, player number 4 on our 5-down list could be here partially because of kind of a negative impact from Kirby Dach not being where he needs to be yet. But this player needs to take control of his own game and become more than what he has been, and that's Alex Newhook. Because for me, so far this season, Alex Newhook is just a string of question marks. Like, where is he? What's going on with Alex Newhook? As we said, he's on a line with Dach, and Dach's not performing at peak capacity yet. You can understand that a little bit, but that doesn't mean that Alex Newhook can't be doing things on his own as well. Yeah,
Alex Newhook should be able to create opportunities, and if there's a player who can play Marty St. Louis' preferred style, that chip and chase, it's Alex Newhook.
Yeah.
He should be, use his speed, and he's typically strong on the forecheck. And yeah, he's -6 himself, and that's a function of that line. That's, strangely, Yoel Armia is the best player on that line.
That's right.
Alex Newhook, part of the reason that line is struggling is they usually start the shift without the puck. Alex Newhook can't win a faceoff if his life depended on it right now. He's somewhere around 25-28% at the faceoff dot, and certainly is struggling even more than that in defensive zone faceoffs. So he has Kirby Dach, you can understand. Mm-hmm. Alex Newhook, less so. He's had a difficult start to the season.
And our last entry on the 5-down portion of this segment is actually an entire line. And I'm going to use the 3 I's. It's the top line of Suzuki, Caulfield, Slafkovsky. They are invisible. And we're not talking power play performance, because we know Caulfield has had success on the power play this year. This is 5-on-5 in general overall. They've been invisible. They've been ineffective. And for me, that's inexcusable. When this is supposed to be the marquee line to lead the Canadiens, and they have been just flat.
Yeah, especially the last 2 games. Cole Caulfield started great, 3 goals in 3 games. He's got 4 overall. But haven't seen him in the last couple of games. Juraj Slafkovsky now maybe has a hand injury, but wasn't performing before that. Nick Suzuki. And I think part of that can be blamed on the fact that there's no second line for the opposition to worry about. Right. But so the top line is getting keyed on by the opposition teams. But that was the case last year as well. Mm-hmm. And the top line was able to push through that and perform as one of the better top lines in the league. We're not seeing that same. And typically Nick Suzuki starts a season slow, and I think we're seeing that again. Yeah. But if we're being fair and being honest, we've got to put them in this 5-down category.
I think it's another drop in the bucket for advocating for maybe Slafkovsky should spend some time on Dach's line on the second line. It might help Dach a little bit, could help Slafkovsky a little bit. And maybe Yoel Armia bumps up to play with Suzuki and Caulfield for a little bit, since he is the one that's had, if you can call anybody successful in that second line, has been Armia and a bit of a veteran presence. And we know from his work in Laval last year, he does a great job with younger players.
Well, and I've said to put Alex Newhook on that top line to use his speed,
Yes.
to be retrieving pucks and be in on the forecheck and disrupting plays, and because what we're seeing is even when the Canadiens do fire it in, that it's too easy for the team just to skate it out. It's in the corner, the defensemen pick it up and one pass and it's out. There doesn't seem to be anyone who's a disruptor, and that could be Alex Newhook. We'll see how the injury situation affects all of that, but either suggestion is valid.
I think so. So that is our 5 down. Let's talk about some good things that have happened in the first 5 games of the season. Our 5 up. These are 5 guys who are, overachieving, going beyond expectations, really lighting things up for the Canadiens so far this season. And we would be remiss if we didn't start this list with Lane Hutson, who he was already the cause of so much buzz going into this season, but his play alone has turned him into an overnight sensation, not just in Montreal, but around the league. I mean, the entire league has already sat up and said, whoa, hello, Lane Hutson, welcome to the NHL.
Yeah. Sidney Crosby is talking about him. Chris Letang is talking about him. Brady Tkachuk is reacting to him. And every time he touches the puck in the Bell Center, there's oohs and ahs and reaction from the Bell Center fans, and much of that was expected. Although he's gone way above when adding a dynamic presence to the offense. But what I think has surprised most people who are watching him carefully is that he's defended pretty well.
Yeah.
He wins more battles than he loses. He's going to lose some, but he's figuring things out. He's figuring things out. He's figuring out the NHL game. And when he makes a mistake, he learns. You can see that. And I think the other part of it is the Montreal Canadiens, his teammates are learning from him, learning how to play with him, because he's such a different beast. And there's going to be mistakes. People point to that in the Pittsburgh game where he was deep and he made that pass that was a little bit dangerous, but time was running out. The Canadiens were trailing by a goal. You want to see that. You want to see somebody trying to create offense, and I'd put it more on the other players on the ice that were standing still and didn't back him up. So
That's right.
Playing over 30 minutes, he leads all the Sportsnet Stats had a tweet out saying that Lane Hutson leads all NHL defensemen in offensive zone possession time. That's how much time the puck is actually on your stick. So his number this season is 5 minutes and 45 seconds. He leads the league. Listen to the names that he's ahead of. Cale Makar at 534, Quinn Hughes 458, Evan Bouchard 441, and Roman Josi at 428. That's pretty good company, and he's ahead of them all.
He's ahead of them. Yeah.
He's been sensational.
Absolutely. So he is our first on the 5 up, followed by another defenseman, Kaiden Guhle. Kaiden Guhle, every year he gets better. He's still young, and yet every year he gets better and more impressive. I think this is already the strongest that we've seen him. He has gotten even more as he matures as a young man. His game is maturing twofold. He is confident. He's fearless. He's self-assured. He is, I see him being being a future someday, maybe, absolutely captain material. If there comes a time that Suzuki's not there anymore and Kaiden Guhle still is, he's got the leadership skills. He always has had those. I'm just completely impressed with Kaiden Guhle's start to the season.
And on the offensive side as well.
Yes.
When he's taken away from Mike Matheson, he doesn't have to make up and sit back and make up for Matheson's rushes and Matheson's errors. and it's freed him to show that he can be an offensive player. He has 4 points in 5 games. He leads the Canadiens at a +4, ±, in terms of hits and block shots and all the things that he typically does on the defensive side. He's added an offensive element and, is vying to be the Canadiens' number one defenseman. And he and Lane Hutson look like they're going to be a pairing for now and the future. And let's just hope that this injury, and we said he's not traveling to New York, but let's hope that this injury doesn't keep him out for very long.
Hey, if an appendectomy if he could get back on the ice that quickly after having his appendix removed, come on now. Our third entry on the 5-up side of things, this is such a nice change. I am actually delighted that Brendan Gallagher is on this list because it's been a few years of really laborious performances from Brendan Gallagher when he is just not living up to his reputation. He's not been living up to the amount of his contract, his salary. But boy, has that changed a little bit this year. Brendan Gallagher looks revived so far in this early part of the season, and it's great to see.
2 goals in 5 games for him. One of those was a power play goal. He's on the second wave of the power play. And that line that Jake Evans is centering with Brendan Gallagher and Josh Anderson is a real energy line. And talk about the kind of game that Marty wants to see them play, chipping it in, chasing it, forechecking hard. That's what you're going to get from this line, and they played really well together.
They did. So congratulations, Brendan Gallagher. Keep it up. We want to see more of this throughout the season. Here we have another entry where we did speak about this already earlier in the show, but absolutely Jake Evans is part of the 5-up to start the season. He has always been very quietly dependable back there in the bottom 6. He's a very strong player. You heard Jeff Gorton use that term to describe Jake Evans' performance in training camp, that he's a strong player for us. He's versatile. He has an edge to his game. He's not the most obvious guy as a chippy or edgy kind of player, but he plays with a bit of an edge. He's a great teammate, and I just think that Jake Evans is come out of the gate looking very good so far.
Yeah, and talk about stealing chairs. He stole that third line center spot away from Dvorak. And is performing well. He's the guy that you rely on. It's Nick Suzuki on offensive zone faceoffs. It's Jake Evans on defensive zone faceoffs, maybe the harder task. And he's hovering around 53% in terms of his faceoff winning percentage. He's speedy and so adds to that energy. Brendan Gallagher's always been a good skater, and Josh Anderson can fly. So that's a quick line, that third line, and Jake Evans is the pivot on that line.
Our final entry in the 5-up side of things is a duo, and that is the 2 guys that we started talking about earlier in this show about stealing jobs. Emil Heineman, Oliver Kapanen. Oliver Kapanen obviously had a very good training camp, enough to make the Canadiens want to keep him around and not send him back to the SHL, not want to lose another full year with him. And so he's here. He's obviously a very positive presence, but my big hype has to go to Emil Heineman, probably because since I cover the Laval Rocket so heavily, I've been hyping him all year last year. How much his game came on, particularly in the second half of the season last year, and how ready he looked, what a great camp he had. And he just came out flying in the first couple of games in the regular season, just putting his stamp on things and saying, you have to keep me here. And that's what's happened. And I think it's great for both of these players.
Heineman scored in 2 consecutive games, and I think, as I said before, the reaction from fans was, wow, what a shot. And Kapanen has an assist, his first career NHL point. The 2 of them are playing between 10 and 12 minutes. Is Christian Dvorak the best match for them? Well, he can add some experience to that line. I'm sure. I'd like to see. I just said how well that Jake Evans fits with Gallagher and Josh Anderson, but there's a part of me that wants to see the speed of Jake Evans with two good skaters in Heineman and Kapanen to see how those guys would play together. But the Canadiens took a risk in keeping Kapanen. It was either with the Canadiens or Europe, and so far he's with Montreal. And I think they are performing really well and making it tough for Marty St. Louis to get Michael Pezzetta into the lineup.
Absolutely. And that's what every player is there to do. Make it hard for the coach to take your job away from you. And they're doing it very well. So there you have it. In the first 5 games of the season, that's our early season 5 up and 5 down. We'll return to this throughout the season because I would imagine this list is going to change depending on where we're at in the season. How much do you agree or disagree, of course, with our 5 up and 5 down? But the Canadiens Connection question of the week, it's a 2-parter. Here's where we want to hear from you. A, which player has surprised you in these opening 5 games? And B, who needs to step up their game for the Canadiens? Sorry, let me try this again. Who needs to step up their game in order for the Canadiens to be in the mix, which they currently are not? So a 2-part question. A, which player has surprised you in the opening 5 games? And B, who needs to step up so that the Canadiens can get into the mix? Send us a text at 585-3-ROCKET. Leave us a comment on YouTube if that's where you're watching the show right now, or send us a tweet on X at Habs Connection, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We want to hear from you, and the best answers are going to be read next week on the show, so we want to hear from you. With that, we are going to get to our last commercial break for today. Game Time is a new sponsor that we have this month, and they have a terrific incentive for new users. You could get some money off by buying tickets to a Habs game or your favorite concert using Game Time, just with a special offer for our listeners and viewers. So check this out, and then we'll be back on the other side. Stay with us. You're listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
There's nothing quite like opening night for the NHL season, right? Or even opening weekend for that matter. The excitement, the anticipation, all of the things that you love about hockey season finally back after a long summer and after a bunch of preseason games that maybe weren't exactly thrilling to watch. And while getting back to watching Habs games on TV most nights of the week is pretty fun, it's even better when you can experience the Canadiens live. Whether they're at home at the Bell Center or on the road, Game Time will have you covered this season to get you the best opportunities for great deals on seats to see your favorite NHL team live. Game Time sets itself apart from other third-party ticket sellers in a lot of ways. You're going to filter out all the fluff with the Game Time app, and you're just going to get incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste a lot of time sifting through thousands of ticket offers on other apps. So let's just take a look here. The Pittsburgh Penguins are playing at the Bell Center on Monday night, and I'm just taking a look at their interactive ticket map, and I'm seeing that ticket prices on Game Time are starting at $62. I'm even seeing, though, if you want to get down in the reds, there are tickets under $200 down in the reds, and I'm talking like in the lower third of the reds. There are some great deals. What else do I love about the app? Seat views before you buy. If there is one thing that I am obsessive about when I'm buying tickets for a hockey game or even for concerts and shows and things like that, which Game Time also has tickets available for, I want to know, particularly if it's at a venue that I'm not necessarily familiar with, like say I'm checking out a Habs game on the road, I want to know exactly what my view from my seat is going to look like. And Game Time, its app, has a really cool feature that you get a panoramic example of what your seat that you're looking at purchasing will look like before you get to buy it. lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection. They even have a feature that you can toggle on their app called all-in pricing, which shows the complete total to buy the tickets up front, including any taxes and fees and things like that, so that you don't get any surprises at checkout when you think, oh, well, let me just buy these tickets for $100, and then you go to checkout and it ends up costing you $180 or something like that. You know, you're going to get all-in pricing right up front. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Love that. And ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets, whether it's for the NHL or for a concert or a show. Take the guesswork out of buying those tickets with Game Time picks. And we've got a great incentive for our listeners. Thanks to the folks over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. It's free. It's simple. All you have to do is punch in your email address. I just did it today. And use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
And welcome back to episode 318 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. Don't forget to follow this podcast at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Visit our website at canadiensconnection.fm. Hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. No matter how you are listening or watching, we don't ever want you to miss an episode. We're here every Saturday. You should also know that we've been covering the Canadiens and their prospects online. We always say for more than a decade. Every year, though, we're getting closer to 2 decades. Believe it or not.
That's right.
Believe it or not, we're actually in the 15-year range, and so we're a trusted resource for Canadiens coverage. You can find our coverage now not only on YouTube and through this podcast, but also on Hockey Buzz as well. hockeybuzz.com. Just click on the Canadiens logo and that'll take you to our page, which there will be contributions from Rick, from myself, and from Chris G as well. And so you can find our written content there. I've said it a couple of times. Be sure you subscribe to this podcast, but also whether you're watching right now on YouTube or not, be sure you go to our YouTube channel and hit subscribe. Just the easiest way to find it is just actually type in InsideTheCanadiens.com, and that'll take you right to it. Hit subscribe. This podcast comes out on podcast apps every Saturday, but then we release it in a video format on YouTube on Mondays. And on Tuesdays, I have the Rocket Hockey Report, giving you all of the inside scoop about how the Laval Rocket are performing and how the prospects playing in the AHL are doing as well. And then occasionally we have a Habs Hockey Report that I host that when it comes out on Thursdays. So lots of great content, and you don't want to miss any of that. Don't forget, if you can, leave us a 5-star review if you're using an app that allows you to leave a review, and tap the share button. That really helps us out. And if you're looking for a way to help us out, that'd be a great way to do it. Share our podcast on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget, we want to hear from you for this week's Canadiens Connection question of the week. It's a 2-parter. Which player has surprised you so far in the first 5 games of the season? And the second part of it is who needs to step up in order for the Canadiens to get in the mix? We want to hear from you, 5853-ROCKET, or drop a comment to us on any of our social media platforms. And who knows, your comment could be one of the ones that we pick out to read here on the show, because we have such great fans, followers, listeners, viewers, and they always have such wonderful, profound and well thought out things to say, and just passionate Habs fans that love their team and love the sport. So we've got a few to read from YouTube this week, Rick, because there was a lot of response to last week's question of the week, which we always love when there's a lot of response. In case you forget, what was the question of the week last week? We asked, if you were in charge of the Canadiens, what is the first change that you would make after opening week? And yeah, that's sparked a lot of engagement.
Our listeners seem to like when we put them in charge.
I think so.
Yeah.
She26, frequent commenter, she says, great show, guys. I loved the 6 or 7 questions segment. She says, first, we need an experienced coach. And this is an aside. It is no secret. She's not a fan of Marty St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
That's fine.
She continues by saying, second, my opinion only, Barron needs to go. I'd love to see Jackeye and Mailloux together, even if it's just to see if they fit like they did in Laval. And with that said, Jackeye should get more TOI, time on ice. Thanks again, as always, for doing what you do. Thank you for that. That's
very nice.
That's very nice. And I'll be interested to see if she agrees with us putting Arbor Jackeye in the 5 down category.
I don't think she's going to agree with that.
I don't think she's going to.
No, I don't think she will.
I don't think she's going. And that's okay. That's okay. We like good disagreement and debate.
Next comment that we've chosen, there was a bunch of them, but the one one of the ones we chose was from at YouBasic on YouTube. He said, I'm not a big fan of the huge training camp. And it was pared down quite a bit this year.
Yeah.
So he wasn't a fan of the 59 players that were in camp. I'd rather see the team roster, YouBasic says, with 5 or 6 prospects. Now, here we are 4 games in, and Marty St. Louis is juggling lines, and the team chemistry is a bit fragile. And he finishes saying, great show. So thank you for that comment, YouBasic.
I think that's a good comment. And yeah, you do see, and that's something we didn't talk about. How much is of what we're seeing with certain players, how much of that is an effect of the fact that preseason did not go the way it should have gone at all? So that's a good point. At Galkin FTW says 100% changes are coming. So the names in the pool will be Raphael Harvey-Pinard, Barron, Dvorak, Mailloux, and Kapanen. If management start panicking with Kaiden, meaning Primo, I won't be happy. Both our goalies are fine. What the team needs most, far and above anything else, is better coaching. Oh, there's another St. Louis fan. Said completely tongue-in-cheek. He says, we need to understand how to play better, smarter hockey in all 3 zones. And love this ending comment. He says, this is what I've been waiting over 50 years for, is to see a YouTube channel break down the games and issues on a game board, similar to the old days of Howie Meeker and his Telestrator.
Yeah, we remember Howie Meeker.
That's a great reference.
Howie Meeker and his powder blue blazer going crazy on. We need a Telestrator, apparently.
Apparently we do.
Yeah.
We will, we're doing the best that we can with the Canadiens Connection budget. We'll see what we can do. But it's a great reference and a great comment. So thank you very much.
Last but not least, we have our dear friend, Center Heist 7948. Center Heist says, great show again. Wow. This is a loaded question. And to remind you, the question was, if you were in charge, what's the first change you'd make? So he said, it's a loaded question. What would I do as GM? First, Jakub Dobeš gets a few looks in Montreal. Time to move off Primo. Sorry, nice kid, but you can't fix what he has missing from his game. Reflexes, positioning, mental fragileness, if that's a word, and Barron, the same thing. Now, of course, I know they'll give them a little bit more time, but it needs to happen. For Barron, he's a beautiful skater, but it just trips over himself a lot when the game gets physical. He's done, and both of them break under pressure. Yes, Struble has been better than Arbor and Barron. What Struble brings is better positional play than Arbor. However, he's tough, but he doesn't bring what Arbor brings. That's fair. Mm-hmm. Now I'd like to see Arbor and Struble and Logan in rotation. So Primo and Barron moved in the future, and I hate to say they'll have to move Dvorak by the trade deadline. And we're going to find out whether RHP is AHL material or not. And when
he is.
I think so.
I'll just say that.
And when you trade, and he's had injuries, but when you trade those Barron and Primo in a package and maybe some picks and get a Delorier type player with size and physical to take some of the pressure off Xhekaj. That way he can focus more on improving his positional play. Actually, I'd hired Larry Robinson and who did I mention last week? Markov and Chelios, I think, as defensive consultants. He puts forward a good name, and Larry Robinson as a defensive consultant, because we know he doesn't want the coaching responsibility, but I think we could get him as a consultant. Just look what he did with Blues cup-winning team. He has always been successful at teaching. Whatever this defensive system is, and it's tough to figure out, and the players are having a tough time figuring it out, it needs to end. It's not working with this group. This team must get bigger, fast, and tougher with more skill as well. Not enough grit yet. For me, it's enough to have Hudson and Caulfield and Newhook that are small. Can't have any more small players on this team. Sorry, Sean Farrell.
Yeah, sorry, Sean.
And special teams still need a lot of work. But defensive play is the first priority to correct, and I think Jeff Gorton would agree with that. If they're going to move forward, we're slowly getting more talented, but we also need more grit. Keep up these awesome shows. Thanks very much to Center Heist.
And keep up these awesome comments.
Yeah,
Center Heist, all of you, and all of those of you who we didn't have a chance to get to, because there were a lot for us to choose from this week. This was just a few. So get into the comment section on our YouTube channel. Send us a text. We want to hear from you. We love to hear all of these comments. It's really, really fun for us. And I think that all of you like to have your own friendly debates going on in the comment section as well. So what do we have this week for the Canadiens before our next show? Just 2 games. There's the Saturday night game on Long Island at the New York Islanders. And then on the 22nd, the New York Rangers visit the Bell Center in Montreal. So 2 games coming up before our next Canadiens Connection podcast, which is next Saturday, October 26th, which I guess would technically be our Halloween edition. So I want to know, if I bring my trick-or-treat bucket, am I going to get candy?
Only if you wear a costume.
Challenge accepted.
I'm sorry I asked.
Okay.
Oh boy.
All right, everyone. We'll take this into consideration, and if I dress up, Rick has to dress up as well. Right?
No.
I know you all have my back. No. I know you all have my back out there. All right. Subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe to the Canadiens Connection on any of your favorite podcast apps. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Enjoy Saturday night hockey. And we very much look forward to meeting you back here again next week for another fun episode of the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.